The server room was silent, except for the hum of machines that should not have been silent at all. 43 minutes before the biggest investor presentation in the company's history, every screen on the 9th floor went black at once. Not flickered. Not glitched. Went black, all of them, in the same second, as if someone had reached behind the world and pulled a plug that connected everything. Derek Voss stood at the head of the table, tie loosened, jaw tight, staring at a blank screen that was supposed to show 11 months of engineering work to 20 of the most influential venture capitalists on the East Coast. $300 million in potential funding sat in that room, checking watches. Derek had built Faro Dynamics from a garage into a company worth talking about in 8 years. By refusing the word impossible and by learning early that most people were not worth his time. Engineers were. Investors were. Everyone else was scenery. The old man who unlocked the doors each morning was scenery. Derek had walked past him for 2 years without learning his name. The IT director, 26-year-old Priya, was on her knees behind the server rack, flashlight in her teeth. The failure was not in this year's software. It was buried in the original infrastructure, a legacy system nobody on staff had written, that everything modern had been quietly built on top of without anyone fully understanding how. That was the stake laid bare in the first few minutes. Not just money, not just a presentation. 8 years of Derek's life distilled into a single black screen, and no one in the building who could explain why. That was when Walter Combs stepped into the doorway. He was 67 years old, built narrow through the shoulders the way men get when age takes muscle before it takes height, with silver hair cut close and a security uniform 2 sizes too big for him, the kind the company ordered in bulk and never bothered to tailor. He had a laminated badge clipped to his shirt pocket that said Walter, Night Security, and nothing else, because nothing else about him had ever seemed relevant enough to print. Might be the cooling relay on the old B-rack, Walter said. 3rd floor east side. It's been groaning for about a month. Derek turned, more startled than he wanted to admit that the sound in the room had come from someone he had never once heard speak. This is a closed meeting. I heard the noise from the stairwell, Walter said. Figured I'd mention it before you spent the next hour looking somewhere else. Priya's head came up from behind the server rack. There is no B-rack in our documentation. That system's not in any of our current maps. It's not supposed to be, Walter said. It's not in your maps because your maps only go back 6 years. That rack's been running since the company was 11 people in a garage on Delancey Street. Somebody built the whole modern platform on top of it and never migrated it off, because migrating it off would have meant admitting nobody left on staff understood how it worked. The room had gone quiet in a different way now. Not the silence of failure, but the silence of people realizing they were listening to something they did not expect to be true. And you understand how it works, Derek said. It was not quite a question. There was an edge in it. The tone of a man who did not like being corrected by someone whose job title suggested he should not know things like this. I wrote it, Walter said. Derek almost laughed. Almost. Something in Walter's face stopped him. The flat and unbothered certainty of a man who was not performing anything, who had said something enormous the way other people mention the weather. That's not possible, Derek said. This company is 8 years old. You've been on our security roster for 4 years, Walter said. Before that, I was somewhere else for a long time. Before that, I was one of 2 engineers who built the original back end for a startup on Delancey Street that got bought out, restructured, renamed, and eventually became Faro Dynamics. I wrote most of the code that's currently sitting underneath everything you've built since. Nobody kept the documentation because nobody who bought the company thought the original architecture mattered. They just kept running it because it worked. It's still working. It's just tired. Before we continue, if you believe that wisdom has no uniform and dignity does not depend on a job title, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. Derek's first instinct was suspicion. A security guard claiming to be the architect of his company's foundation, appearing at the exact moment of crisis, sounded less like a rescue and more like a rehearsed story. If you built it, Derek said, prove it. 11 minutes before I tell 20 people we lost their time. Walter did not argue. He crossed to the rack, crouched beside Priya without asking, and looked at the tangle of cables the way a man looks at something he has not seen in years, but never forgotten. His hands moved carefully, tracing a path through hardware Priya had spent 20 minutes failing to find. "Cooling relay's cycling wrong," he said. "When it overheats, the failsafe shuts the whole rack down instead of just the affected module, because the failsafe logic was never updated after the migration in year 3. I always meant to fix that. Never got the chance." He paused. "There's a manual override. It's not documented anywhere current because I'm the only person who ever used it." "Where is it?" Priya said, already moving. Walter told her, not vaguely. "Precisely. The way a person describes a route they have walked 1,000 times, down to which panel required a flathead and which required a hex key, down to the fact that the third screw stripped easily and needed to be turned counterclockwise first to loosen the plate before it would come free. It should not have worked." Derek stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, watching a man in a uniform meant for checking badges and unlocking doors reach into the actual architecture of his company and speak to it like an old friend. 9 minutes passed, then 10. At 10 minutes and 40 seconds, the emergency lighting in the server room dimmed once, the way a held breath releases, and the black screens in the conference room flickered back to blue, then to the company's logo, whole and steady. Derek did not say anything for a long moment. He was looking at Walter the way people look at something after they realize they have been looking past it for years. That particular vertigo of understanding you have been wrong about someone in a way that costs you something to admit. Walter was still crouched by the rack, quiet, already coiling a loose cable the way a person tidies a room out of habit rather than instruction. 26 years, Derek said finally. "You've had that inside you for 26 years and you've been checking my badge every morning." "You never asked," Walter said. It was not bitter. It landed with more weight for not being bitter at all. The presentation went forward 8 minutes late, and Derek did not mention the outage once, because there was nothing in it that needed apologizing for anymore. Afterward, when the investors had gone and the 9th floor had emptied into evening, Derek found Walter in the lobby, back at his post beside the door, badge still clipped crooked on his pocket as if the last hour had not happened at all. Derek asked him to sit down, not as an order. He asked and waited, and when Walter finally lowered himself into one of the lobby chairs, Derek sat across from him and asked what had happened. All of it, the company on Delancey Street and the buyout and the 26 years between then and now. The story came slowly. A partnership that dissolved badly when the founders sold without him. A decade of contract work that dried up when his eyesight made fine soldering difficult and pride kept him from adapting fast enough. A wife who died 6 years ago and a pension that never stretched far enough. A choice 4 years back between explaining a resume full of gaps or taking a job nobody asked hard questions about. He took the job. He watched from just inside the door each morning a company grow on the foundation he had poured, and never told anyone. Because after enough years of being unseen, a person stops expecting to be seen. Derek did not offer him a fortune. He offered something more precise, a consulting position on the infrastructure team, paid at the rate the work deserved, his name finally on documentation he had carried only in his head for decades. Walter said he would think about it, which both of them understood to mean yes. 3 months later, the badge on his shirt said something different. Walter Combs, Senior Systems Architect. He still arrived early most mornings, and he still nodded at the new night guard by name, because he had asked for it on the first day. The way no one had ever asked for his, he kept his old badge in his desk drawer. He never explained why. He did not need to. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the small human moments that change everything. And tell us in the comments, who in your life might be carrying more than you've ever asked them about?